Welcome back to Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life. Hello, Laurel. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. We have a great topic for our listeners today and one that's so important. So we're going to dive right into it and get going on, let's see, what is the best way to say this in a very succinct way? We could say this in a lot of different ways, but it really is about finding and let's say developing appropriate, it's developing support for the beautiful work. Developing support when you're changing and growing. Ooh,
It's a good
right?
one.
Well,
Yes,
when we're doing our beautiful work, we're always changing and growing, even if it's in small ways. And so to be able to, develop support along the way as we're changing and growing is a changing and growing process too, right?
it
So,
is.
yeah, yeah.
Especially, I don't know how many of our listeners are like this. I'm going to say like me, but when I began doing my beautiful work, my inner work, it was very private, and I kept it a lot to myself. Right. So when I think about my growth and doing the inner work has been to be able to share with people I'm working on these things and oh, I might need help and support. That doesn't come easy for me.
Right,
What about
right.
you?
I think that's a really great way for us to even just begin here because I think, we've talked before about oftentimes doing the beautiful work is ugly or messy at the beginning. It isn't so beautiful. And sometimes, quite frankly, many times, right, people come in crisis. Like things have gotten so bad or so uncomfortable or something really feels disastrous has happened in our lives. And so then we go and we get support or we go and we get help, right? And so that kind of speaks into this idea of keeping things private or internal, for quite some time before we actually share or go out and feel like, wow, I need some help now. I can't do more than what I've done on my own, maybe. And so this idea of developing support is, I guess, recognizing, right, when you need to go outside yourself, if it's outside help that you're looking for. And we're going to talk about developing your own inner support as well, but let's kind of focus on the outside to start with, because I feel like
Yeah,
they're probably two a little different topics at
I
some
think they
level.
are.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I think when I think about starting in a little bit of privacy, a little bit of really a lot of self reflection, I'm going to say that was my beginning step. My external support and resources were my middle, and then I can come full circle because I'm much more self-aware and I am much more in tune with my needs. I can then go to the inner support. So I love this that
Yeah, yeah, that's
we
great.
have a range of topics to talk about.
We do, we do. I want to come back to the idea of, getting to the point where you feel like you can't handle it, or you might be going into crisis, or you might going into a place that you critically need help, right? And I would say that uh, I have found in working with people that one of the things that happens almost simultaneously as we're keeping it internal and keeping it private, right? Or holding secrets that we don't feel good about, right? That's when a lot of times self shame and judgment and inner criticism begin to develop, and it becomes an overlay of the work. Like now we've multi-tiered out the work, so some of the work is in just dealing with the judgment and the shame and the feelings all around whatever is going on, and then dealing with whatever's going on as well, right?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
that is so true. And I think that is a layer of the work, almost as if it's a messenger. If you find yourself that it's not an external
Beautiful.
crisis,
Yeah.
right? But you're trying to make changes, but you're not ready to tell anybody about this thing,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
less than this flaw that you really are feeling. I need to change this, or it's not good.
Yeah.
Just that shame, the secrecy, and even the asking for help. Many of us don't know how to ask for help.
Yeah. I
Um,
didn't. Yeah.
I didn't either. So though I think that's really, if you think about those things as messengers, like, oh, these are popping up for me. Maybe I do need to tell someone about this. Maybe I do need to find a place to share these feelings and need for growth with others who are going through the same thing or can guide me through this, right?
Yes, yes. I love that idea of seeing like self-judgment, self-criticism, shame, feeling really badly about ourselves as a messenger of work to be done, and not knowing what else to do with whatever's gone on internally, or whatever you've done externally, whatever's happened in your life, not knowing what else to do with it, but to keep rolling it around and judging it, criticizing, looking at it, feeling badly about it, right? and and that's the messenger. The messenger is, look, let's get out of this loop. This is not serving anybody to just feel badly about it and feel badly about yourself. You can't get beyond it until you begin to do some work around it, right? And
Yes.
yeah, get into the tools of self-forgiveness and some detachment and understanding, and being able to look at the big picture, having some objectivity, having somebody outside giving you different feedback, right? There's so many aspects of getting support, especially outside support, that start to give us new perspectives on where we've been, and get us out of that loop, that same loop.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes we can't do that on our own. We
Yeah.
really do need the external, influence or feedback or support to help us break
Yeah.
that cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things I love about self-help books. I love to think of it as like bibliotherapy. When you get a good book that might be addressing the topic that you're struggling with, or even self-criticism or self-judgment, right? That in there, it helps you begin to start a new internal dialogue as well. So that's another outside resource that may not necessarily be the first step. Might be that you're not comfortable going to talk to somebody else, but you might get a book and read about, some aspect of what you're struggling with, to start to give you a new voice beside your
Yes.
own. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And an understanding that you're not alone. I think oftentimes when we feel alone, as if we're the only one that struggles with something,
Yes.
it feels much more hopeless than knowing. And books help with that,
Yeah.
if someone is writing about this topic and however many copies of this book has been sold, obviously there are people that also struggle with this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's
That's
so many
true.
resources when you think about books, podcasts, programming.
Mm-hmm.
We have access to so many things that can help us in that initial, layer of support.
Yeah, yeah. And that feeling at the beginning, when we do reach out for help, if we are going to somebody for the first time for counseling, coaching, going into therapy, having a spiritual mentor, feeling like you really go into that first session or so, almost feeling like it's a bit of an interview process when you first meet someone, not going in and thinking, this is my person, they're going to help me, but rather going in and going, okay, is this my person? Can they help me? How do we relate? Is how they're showing up and what they're saying, feeling right? How intuitively are you connecting with that other person, right? Because this is a big part of finding the right place to get support. Because I know I've seen people go and get support that hasn't turned out to be support. They've been re-injured or re-traumatized by somebody not doing the work very well or not leading the work very well. And so it's really important to feel like you're going in and finding the right person. Yeah.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it is true. Even when you think about, putting yourself with a group of other people that are going through the same thing, it really has to be a good match for each of us individually, right? Who we're with, what the style, what the approach is. For me, I know I love being with a group, but I need a group that processes information much like I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that it cannot be, maybe overcoming fear by doing fearless things. That's not me.
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
so it's
Mhm.
important to find someone who's a good match for you as you do the work.
Yeah, yeah, and that's great that you mentioned that too in group. I know, for me, the group process that we use in group and we've been using in our groups has been one that just resonated really highly with me because there was so much about um, uh, being out of a model where there was a more of a hierarchy, that there were agreements that allowed everybody time to share. Like there were aspects of it that really resonated for me because if I had been in a different kind of group, I might not have ever gotten heard. I might not have had a chance to speak because I'll be the one that would hold back. And the agreements helped push me into spaces where I started to look at my communication style and how I showed up in relationships. And so when we think about getting support, right, the support that we go out and receive, it usually broadens out and touches all kinds of aspects of our life and can enrich so much of our general life experience. And so that's why it's important to really feel like you're getting something that supports you well individually. Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't feel like you're in the right place, maybe you're not.
Yeah. Trust that. Trust that. And over time, as we have some experiences of getting help outside ourselves, right? We are usually, if the work is going well, one of the things that we're going to find is that our inner self is getting stronger, feeling more resourced, feeling more capable, growing in skills, and we're beginning to develop an inner support and an inner resource that we can turn to, right, Laura? Which is
Yes, I
so big.
love
Yeah.
this. I love this place. And, if anything, I'll say that when you get to that place where you feel like, oh, I have everything I need to get through this, it may be
Mm,
something you've been through a million times before. So, based on your past learning and past experience that you have what you need to get through it. But sometimes even something that you may have never experienced before, but just that knowing of, I know how to get through this. I have the resources I need. I'm capable. I can handle difficult things. I love being able to be in that place to really know what it is you need. What
mhm.
do I need? Do I need external? Do I need internal? It's a
Yeah.
beautiful spot
Yeah.
to be in.
It is. It is. I want to give a shout out to my inner power wheel in this way because I think it's a great model of um, how to develop your inner resources and also how to have a tool that you can kind of refer back to. So the inner power wheel is basically a set of 8 practices that you learn about, you practice, and they replace basically old habits that aren't really serving you very well. And when you come to a place in your life where you don't know what to do, or you're feeling like you're stuck, you can always go back to this wheel of practices and say, am I listening to my wake up call? Am I practicing acceptance? Have I released the past? How is that showing up here? Like you can actually start to map out, where am I getting stuck? And so that's one of the beautiful things about, getting some of these outside resources and beginning to develop them internally and becoming really feeling like you're adept at working with your inner life and working with the challenges that life presents to you. It
Mm.
feels so good.
It is so good. And thinking about, you can come back to it. I think what
Yeah.
for me that implies sometimes things come up again. We think we've done all
Mm,
that work and we've learned that one, but
yeah.
sometimes things come up and we're back where we were and knowing that we have resources and support to get through whatever it is. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, One of the things I loved about developing a meditation practice in my life was I always felt like at some point, I felt like I had developed almost like a little sanctuary in my home, in my little meditation chair, right, in the space of where I am, but also inside myself where I could go and self reflect safely without judgment because I had been doing it long enough that I had started to, develop that real sense of I'm okay. What's really happening here? What do I need to do to take care of myself? Do I need more than just me sitting here? Right. That was one of the beautiful benefits for me of meditation, my meditation practice. How about
Yeah.
you, Laurel? Do you feel like, that's been part of your experience too?
Meditation definitely has helped, but my coaching training in embodied self-awareness is something that I use a lot, right? With when I think about being in a situation or struggling with something, being able to really tap into my body and figure out or just feel into, because, the figuring out is largely brain head thinking, but just feel into, what are the messages? What am I being told? What do I know to be true? And really getting that. It's a type of self-reflection, but it's not, I'll say it's not a heady, it's not the thought process. It's not the analytical self-reflection. It's much more the feeling into my body. And so that too is one of those tools that I use. Some days I'm better at it than others, right? Just because it's a practice doesn't mean it looks the same every day. No different than meditation looks the same every day.
Right. Yeah. And I think that that has been a really big pathway to discovering a sense of learning about myself that is beyond like concepts and ideas and all of that, right? But how much we know about ourselves just by tuning in to our full body and full being experience, like how much wisdom can be there, right?
Yes. Yes. So
Yeah.
many times we overlook that. We go to other resources. Right?
Yeah. And I know as a person who has a strong analytical side, it's so easy to get caught up in when we feel like we need support, right? Feeling like you have to have the answer to what's wrong and what's the solution. How am I going to make this all work right? And sometimes our answers or support come more from just knowing the full experience of what's happening internally, right? Uh, Even just knowing, wow, I'm really disappointed in this other person. I was really angry, but taking time to actually reflect, do the deeper work internally to really think about, and feel your feelings of the whole experience, right? Can sometimes be an enlightening moment where, oh, well, if I'm disappointed and I'm not really angry, I'm disappointed. I'm going to handle this differently than I might have done it otherwise, right? Yeah. Yeah. So that's a great example of just being able to do that embodied self-awareness and begin to be your own support and your own helper and figuring things out, right?
Yes. And what if the process was the answer and not an answer being the answer?
So good. Let's just stay with that question for a minute. What if the process was the answer instead of the answer being the answer? I think I found that to be true in so many cases.
Me too. Me too. And it's for me, I wish I could go into problem solving with that curiosity and process, relying or knowing that the process had benefit rather than often, I tend to jump way ahead and I want the answer. And then that has me missing out on the process. So
I know. So
yeah.
all right. Well, Laurel, I want to just hit on this before we wrap up our show for today, which is getting support, kind of developing support for when you're changing and growing. And I think that I want to just speak into that a little bit because I feel like for our listeners that have been on our journey with us and doing this beautiful work, and we're really living into the beautiful work this season, is we are going to be changing and we are going to be growing. And oftentimes, what happens outside us is we may be getting resistance, we may be getting a lot of other people have feelings about the way that we're changing and growing, and we might not be handling that well. And so this idea of getting support when we're changing and growing is so important, because not only sometimes do we have to manage oh, this is uncomfortable. I'm changing and growing. I'm showing up differently. I feel awkward. I feel, like whatever. We have our own big experience internally. There's also experiences going on in our relationships as we're growing and changing. And that is a part that we want to be able to work with well too. And sometimes we really do need support, outside support for that.
We do. And
Yeah.
what came to mind was, support in communication, right? When, oftentimes I think about when we change or when someone that we're in relationship with changes, often change happens without talking about the change that we feel, right? I mean, I know when I'm changing and I know when I'm desiring change. And talking about that is hard because, again, you don't know how it's going to be received by other people. But what I have found is that talking about it out loud, it really helps me, at least, and I think this probably happens to other people too, helps us feel safe, like the change is okay.
Right. And even the idea of, I even saying out loud to the people in your life, I know I'm changing. I know I might be doing things differently than I used to do. And if it's uncomfortable or I'm not, we're not talking about it, maybe we need to talk about it more if it's hard for you, just even awkwardly opening up the conversation, however it happens, right, is really the key. I think, as you hit the nail on the head, right, is finding ways to begin to communicate about the change. Not even so much the change itself, but just about the fact that change is happening and we're going through something here because of that, right? We're not doing our usual dance anymore.
That's right. And two things, when I've communicated about this with people that I'm in relationship with, it's I know I'm experiencing change. I know change is happening.
Yeah.
And I know that my relationship with you is important, right? Yeah. Both things can be true at the same time.
I know. It's so good. And I think it's, I think about, particularly lately, as I've gotten better with it in my own relation, particularly with my husband, right? Talking about, oh, I think I'm going to be doing this differently in the future, or I have this thing coming up and I have some feelings around it. So I just want you to know, I, might be spending a little more time in my meditation chair or whatever, right? It's an invitation for him to be supportive to me in however, whatever that looks like for him. Right. And so even just beginning that conversation invites people to show you how they support you ultimately.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And remembering, because we all support one another differently. So some people, they might just give you more space. My husband tends to be checking in every once in a while. How are you doing with that? Do you want to talk about it? That kind of thing. And other people might just be like, write you a little note of thinking about you today, right? It could be anything, but it's an opportunity for the other person to just remember that you are going through something that's not of the norm, and invite them to know that you're having that experience and see what happens, right?
Yes, because even though in communicating that, you might communicate it in a way where you're putting him on notice or inviting him to support you without asking, right?
Right.
But it is, in fact, whenever we speak into what we're experiencing and share it to the people that are important to us, they are some of our resources, right? And so your husband is a resource to you.
Right.
And without telling him what you're experiencing, you're not opening yourself up to him as a resource.
Yeah, that's great. So Laurel, I feel like kind of where we ended up here today is good invitation to people of maybe some ideas, something to think about. Where are you right now in your growth and your change work? Who is supporting you? What kind of support are you looking for that you don't have yet? I think all of those would be good journaling questions or good things to think about. Anything coming up for you to add to that for our listeners today?
No, I think doing a resource assessment, I
Mm,
mean, the list that
yeah,
I'm a list maker. What resources do you know that you have
right,
from
right.
internal to external that
Mm,
are there for you when you
yeah.
need them, how you need them?
Yeah, yeah. And even just, identifying for yourself, if you know you're doing inner work right now, or you're purposely wanting to evolve in some way and grow, because I think that's where we are collectively at some level, right? We're awakening, we're deepening our work, we're raising our consciousness, we're becoming more conscious of ourselves, each one of us individually. What, even just putting putting real words to, how do you want to grow right now? What are you trying to change about yourself right now? Getting, doing some self-reflection on that and being clearer about that, so that you can then share that more openly
Yes.
with others when
Yeah.
you're ready. Yeah.
And I just had another thought about
Mm.
what is it in your growth that scares you? And how
Mm.
might that feeling change or soften if you had resources to support
That's
you?
great. That's great. Yeah. Yeah. And then if you can go there, I'll add to it. If it scares you, how might it scare the people closest to you? Right. And so you
That's a
can,
big
yeah,
question.
yeah, that is a big question. Okay. Well, we're going to leave that. We're going to leave our listeners with some really big work today. And I'll be back next week for more. Thanks, Laura,
Great.
for being with me today. It was a pleasure as always.
I enjoy every moment of it. I'll see you next week.
See you next week. Bye for
Bye.
now, everybody.